Good afternoon and welcome to the Voters Echo. My name is Bahman Yazdonfar and it is Tuesday, the 9th of June 2015. Since it is our first show of this series, I must make a point that this show is not about partisanship. On the contrary, our purpose is to educate, motivate, and mobilize as many as citizens we can to get involved in the political process as much as they can in order to be part of a decision-making process. Whether it is as simple as voting, volunteering, helping a candidate, or even better, becoming a candidate yourselves. Over last few years, rather last few decades, I am pretty sure a large number of the Canadians have been experienced the hardship of life more than previous generations, especially during the last 5 to 10 years. And as long as we have one of the mainstream political parties in the power, this hardship doesn't go anywhere, whether it is federally, provincially, or municipally, where they do not have their party name printed officially on the ballots. As long as our citizens, Canadians, Ontarians, Torontonians, choose to stay still and allow a handful of people to take control of their destiny, we will relinquish our liberty, freedom, and democracy, or whatever is left of it, within a very short period of time. At the end of this issue, I have emphasized about our parliamentary system. The Westminster parliamentary system, which we inherited from the United Kingdom, is a relatively safe system of representation of the electorate, providing that we don't let party politics trump people's welfare. This phenomena, and by this phenomena I mean voting for a party instead of a person, that started in the early 70s, is getting from bad to worse ever since. At the end, I want to, at the end of this brief introduction, I want to thank Dr. James Sears, who graciously donated his airtime with that channel's studio to me to be able to continue with my educational program, which wouldn't be possible without him. Thank you, James. And now, without further ado, let's start with our very first guest, Greg Vezina, the leader of the provincial party called None of the Above Party. Welcome, Greg.
That's nice for having me.
Thank you for coming. For me, the first guest was very important, and I couldn't find anyone better than you. And the reason being is, even though I am not expressing my opinion in this show, but I like to start with someone who has a little bit of the like-minded with me. I am going to start, as you know, this show has no script, no questions or anything like that. Let's start from a little bit, talk about what's happened in last year or so, what is happening now, and then we start to see what we have to do for the future. Last time I saw you was just slightly over a year ago.
Yeah.
We were in the process of the provincial election.
3 weeks in.
Uncalled provincial election.
Yeah.
We were premature. Tell me, what happened?
Well, you know, the NDP chose in their wisdom to defeat the budget because Andrea Horwath thought she could win.
Really, was it realistic?
Okay, she thought that she could win. Okay, so she brought down the government. And the budget that she voted against was her budget. Okay, and we now know since what a big mistake it was for the NDP to lose the lever of power in a minority government.
As well as conservatives
we
as
see
well, yeah.
how the Harper majority works in Ottawa and the Chrétien majority, before it in some sense, although not as bad, and the Mulroney majority before that, which, had some of the same illnesses, which all started with the Trudeau majority when Michael Pitfield was appointed head of the Privy Council and the Prime Minister's office took over our governance away from our cabinet and our parliament. And that's when it all started. And that's when we put party names on the ballot. Before that we didn't. Before you voted for the best person
in 1972, as I mentioned.
And now we put parties on the ballot. And then we changed the election laws again and gave these advantages to parties and these advantages to parties. And I mean, it got so bad that during the Mulroney years, you had the Liberals and the Conservatives and the NDP on a Friday afternoon introduce a bill to make the small parties run 50 candidates in every riding, to put up $1,000 non-refundable for every
Which
candidate,
still is there.
and 15% of the vote. And if you didn't run 50 candidates, we would seize your assets and give them to the Crown. Christ, we didn't take away drug dealers' assets back then, but the political parties wanted to seize the assets of their opposition. The Communist Party, the great threat to democracy for the last 100 years, the reason for 2 world wars and all the rest, since went to the Supreme Court of Canada, who summarily threw out all of these rules, or majority of them, as being clearly unconstitutional and violating Section 3 rights of the Charter, which are for candidates to run and for voters to cast an informed vote. I went to the Supreme Court, as you know, over broadcast law on one narrow technicality and lost on the technicality. If I brought a Section 3 case about the voters' right to informed on the public airways they own, that they licensed, that the CRTC won't enforce the conditions of license, or they try to enforce and the government refuses to prosecute. Give me a break. So we haven't had a judicial decision on this balance of rights. What are the rights of freedom of the press to suppress a political party under Section 2 versus the rights to an informed vote under Section 3? Well, the Charter says that all rights under Section 2 can be overturned by the government. But
notwithstanding clause.
Well, no. I mean, the Section 2 rights are not paramount.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but Section 3 rights,
yes,
the government does not have the right to use the notwithstanding clause on.
So they started to stifle the smaller
what
party.
they did was, for example, political tax credits. Okay, if you had a law that said only rich white males got taxpayers' money to bribe politicians, that would be unconstitutional. The feminists would be screaming their head off and blah, blah, blah. So we have a law that says only those with taxable income qualify for political tax credit. So what does that mean? Well, that means 100% of the poor, 95% of disabled, 75% of seniors, 70% of immigrants, and 60% of women don't qualify for those. And yet over 80% of white males and over 70% of males as a class. And where are all these great human rights organizations and Democracy Watch and all of these clangers and changers and pot bangers who have these charitable licenses that raise all of this money to fight for your democracy? Oh, they're organizing leaders' debates with Google with only the major parties.
And not even greening.
Okay, you got Samara, that is a charity that bills itself as an organization to inform us of our democratic rights, that goes and makes a deal with Huffington Post in the United States to try and do a leaders' debate and not even mention that there's 15 registered political parties. So, I mean, look, the level of horseshit in our democracy okay, is growing exponentially. So now let's go back. So Andrea Horwath is bright enough,
in spite of all of this,
intelligent enough to say, yeah, we'll give away, we'll roll in the fuzzy dice. I got the fuzzy dice. shit, I crapped out. And so now we got 5 years of Stephen Harper in a skirt. Okay? And for what? What did they accomplish? Nothing. Okay? So we're sitting back. You know, the election was called, and I'm sitting at home. None of the above party didn't exist.
No, I remember that.
I'm sitting at home watching TV. I'm going.
I remember you went to the last minute.
Well, the election's been on a week, okay? And I say to myself, because none of the above party got 2% of the vote in India, and the none of the above on the ballot won the governorship in Nevada.
Okay.
And none of the above is on the ballot in the UK. And I'm
Australia.
And in Yugoslavia. And I'm going, you know what? There's a movement around the world that's grown faster than the Green Party in 5 years that's electing people to government that believes in the 3 R's of direct democracy: referenda, recall, and true electoral reform. And you're not allowed to follow the leader.
That's correct.
Because if you follow the leader, you'll end up at the slaughterhouse. I absolutely guarantee it.
Which we are seeing that.
Okay, so, and look what happens when you got a whole bunch of penguins on an iceberg and a killer whale down below. Well, a bunch of whales go to this end of the iceberg and they smash into the iceberg, and the leader, he falls into the killer whale. What happens? The next leader, he stands up, and the killer whales on this end hit the iceberg, and down comes the next leader, and the killer whales get fed well. Because, your leader will be fondly remembered by his successor. Okay, so I'm sitting at home and I go, this is horseshit. So, all right, we'll start the none of the above party. So great. So I got to register a party and go through all the things. And people don't understand. This is a lot of work. You've been through it. This ain't easy to do, right? So I follow
the paperwork.
Okay, no, but this is ridiculous how hard it is. I mean, how really the barriers to entry, So I send the forms in to Elections Ontario to register the name, none of the above party, and they say no. They say, wait a minute, why? I say the chief electoral officer is using his discretion to refuse the registration name because it's going to confuse voters. And I said, well, except he only has the right to use his discretion when our name confuses voters with the name of another party. We're not trying to register the regressive preservative party. or the undemocratic party or we're really not liberals. Okay, we're trying to register the none of the above. We're none of these guys, right? No, they say. Okay, fine. And remember, nominations don't open until 3 weeks after the election starts, and then they close in 7 days.
1 week, yeah.
Okay? And all the major parties are allowed to pre-register all of their candidates before the writ is even dropped.
Yes.
So Rogers Cable is on the phone to all of the major parties the day the writ is dropped and taping all of their debates and the ridings before nominations even open. In many cases, they ran their debates and the ridings before nominations even closed. But Rogers has a community license to enhance the political fabric of the nation by regurgitating the same old bullshit we've been hearing for the last 50 years. That's enhancing the political fabric of the nation, according to the Broadcast Act and Rogers' billions of dollars worth of revenue from their monopoly, which is why we gave them the license. Okay? If you want the CRTC to enforce the law,
it has to be impartial, completely impartial.
You have to be broadcasting hate news.
Yeah, which they don't let you.
Okay? But if you want to broadcast false news, if you want to lie right in the face of viewers like Fox News in the United States,
or recently we had the Sun News
look,
that they
they're
closed.
all okay. Even though there's a requirement that the CRTC act, CRTC doesn't act. Okay, we know that. I went to Supreme Court. Okay, all right. So in any event, so I'm sitting at home and I'm just getting mad. I'm getting madder talking about it here. I get madder and madder by the
get mad.
It's all good.
Just get even.
It's all good. So I said, I want to start the party. And then the chief electoral officer says no. And I said, no, eh? Now, I've been to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, you had
twice.
experience, yes.
Okay? I intervened in the separate school funding case. I ran as a Green candidate. There were debates with a Liberal and a Conservative and NDP in favor of separate school funding. The Green Party ran opposed. No one was allowed to oppose the major parties on television during the whole campaign. Democracy, eh?
Yeah, democracy, yeah.
Fairness and reasonable opportunity for the expression of opposing views, eh?
Not to mention the voters. that
We
the-
only let the guys on that are voting yes. You're not even allowed to see anybody that's opposed. Okay? This is our democracy out there, boys and girls. Go live in Russia. There's more democracy in Russia, in North Korea, than there is in this country, because at least there you know
what you did
what you got.
Yeah.
Here,
they tell you something else and they do something.
so I said, Mr. Chief Electoral Officer, the Act says specifically you only have this power where the name confuses with the name of another party. He's claiming because none of the above, the voters will think that it's not a party that they're. I said, again, buddy, you can't stop me. Well, we're not giving you the name. No problem. 5 o'clock, it took me 5 days to get a reply. At 5 o'clock on the 5th day, and now nominations are going to open on the Monday, and this is a Friday or a Thursday. I said, you know what? All right, you guys, here we go. Call the courthouse. Said I wanted.
How could you get that much of the fast reaction, fast?
I went to the courthouse and I walked in and said I want to speak to the Chief Justice. I have an emergency motion and I want it heard today. And they said, well, okay, 2 o'clock. I said, am I on the docket? Give us your materials. Yes.
Oh,
I prepared all the materials myself from 6 o'clock until 7:30 the next morning. I served them all on the Chief Electoral Officer at 7:30 the next morning. I was in the courthouse at 9:30 in the morning. I was on the docket for 2 o'clock to be heard.
That is amazing that they give you this such a
Well,
fast.
you can get before a judge in this country on an emergency motion if you have a reasonable argument. And I had a pretty reasonable argument.
Oh, because of the deadline.
Well, there's an election going on,
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
You can't make me wait 3 weeks to see a judge. The election will be over. I won't be able to register. And the judge, the registrar looks at the materials. They're complete. I'm citing a section of the law that says he cannot do that. I have his written letter telling me he's doing it. So, at 2 minutes to 2, and I've been on the phone now since 10 o'clock in the morning, literally at the phone.
And you're in the courthouse.
I'm
physically,
in the courthouse,
physically.
Physically on the phone.
Which, the one at
Mr. Beatty.
What is that, 393?
No, I'm in Mississauga.
Oh, Mississauga, yeah.
Doesn't matter, any quarter.
Yeah.
And I'm on the phone basically this whole time with the Greg Asina's Chief Electoral Officer's lawyer, Batty. Whatever. And anyway, so he says, well, maybe if you resubmit, we'll reconsider, blah, 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 blah. And I said, if I don't have my name approved by 2 o'clock,
We are in the court.
I am going to get a court order that you register my name.
And you will face with
And if
publicity,
you don't do it, then I'm going to get a court order nullifying the whole election.
Yes, you can because
Which
they
you can.
yeah.
Which you actually can. There's
Yeah.
a precedent
Yes,
for it
yes.
in Canada. There actually is for nullifying election because of regulatory matter. Okay, so, and then I cite him the case on the phone in the coffee
Which case
shop.
was that?
I forget now.
Yeah,
It's 2 years ago.
yeah.
It's a Quebec case. It was under
Oh.
the Quebec.
No,
civil
I
code
remember
rather than the
there was
charter.
something, but I was not sure
I
where it was.
forget. I think it was during the Drapeau years. I forget what it was.
yeah.
But anyway, whatever it was. So in any event, at 2
You,
minutes...
you did your homework.
I'm standing outside of the courtroom door at 2 minutes to 2 with my materials. I'm ready to walk in and say, here it is, Your Honor. Okay. The law says if my name is confusing with another party's name, he has the right to... I don't have a single word in my name except party. And every party has that name.
Of course.
No party has the word none. No party has of. No, not the da, and above.
Yeah, and,
None of them.
and everybody has a party.
New Democratic Party, Liberal Party, Progressive, Conservative, Green, Rhinoceros, Libertarian. Nobody has none of the above words in their name. Okay. So 2 minutes to 2, the chief electoral said, the lawyer says, I consent. I said, great. Fax it to the registrar's office in the courthouse, because I'm going in front of the judge anyway to get the order because I don't believe you.
Of course.
And if you lie to me, I won't be able to get back to court until Monday,
which is the...
and nominations open on Tuesday and close a week later. Slam. But you're being unreasonable, he says. Tell it to the judge.
Not to me.
So I wait. Court doors open. I go in, I sit down. The registrar says, are you proceeding? I said, oh, if you don't have a fax from the chief electoral officer, I want my order. Judge starts hearing the case.
Oh, so you presented
He starts hearing the case.
Oh, okay.
In comes the registrar, hands me the fax. Your Honor, I withdraw my motion for an order, mandatory order. They've consented. They give you what you asked.
Well, I don't understand what is their fear. I mean, you are like another small party, fringe party to them. What would be the fear?
They felt that people would think that none of the above wasn't a party and that it was that they could vote, like decline their ballot.
Doesn't matter. It is up to people to make that decision, not to them.
Yes, but you see, they felt their obligation was to prevent us from having an unfair advantage over other parties who weren't smart enough to get a name as good as ours.
Oh, well.
You see, but the Elections Act doesn't give them the power to circumvent a political party
they
that's
are-
smart enough
they-
to get a name that might resonate with the public.
Well, that is too bad for them.
Anyway, so-
anyhow, you got to the election. We got to the election.
Yeah.
Let's go back to what happened to these people of this province. We had about 50% turnout, or 50-something percent, and they chose to again elect one of the names, the name that had all of these controversies such as Orange, Mars, Hydro, name it.
That didn't have nothing to do with it, Bauman. It had nothing to do with it. What had to do with it was Tim Hudak scared the bejesus out of everybody. That's what they had. They got Harper in Ottawa, and they're looking at Tim Hudak and remembering Mike Harris, and they said, this guy is a lunatic. He scared the pants off them.
With the 100,000 layoff and all of
okay, all right, and everybody knew it. Okay, they knew it. And the NDP scared everybody because if Andrea will vote down that liberal budget, what kind of a budget would she give us? You understand? So the Liberals won not because people voted for them.
I understand that.
They voted against the Conservative in the NDP.
But they managed to get the majority.
Of course they got a majority because in a democracy, when you get 39% of the vote, you get all of the
First
power.
past the post.
That's how a democracy works.
And
50% of the people vote, and you get 39% of that vote, which is 19.5% of the eligible vote. And in a democracy, 1 out of 5 people get to tell 5 out of 5 people what to do for the next 5 years. And the 4 out of 5 people that didn't vote that way have no say. You are not entitled. And we will use Bill C-51 to arrest you as a terrorist for disagreeing with your government. So you just got to read Mein Kampf. You just got to look at the publications from the Ministry of Propaganda from Hermann Goebbels during the Second World War.
Or before that.
If you'd like to see the game plan for true republicanism, true conservatism, true capitalism, one guy owns everything and he hires someone to kill everybody that interferes with his business. War was not about freedom. The war was all about business, about corporations selling products to both sides, about the Bush grandfather in the Vatican financing the Nazi war and the murder of millions of people. Did a single one of these people get brought to Nuremberg? No way. The losers went to Nuremberg. The winners, they went to the White House.
And they had a chance to
Okay.
to write a history, of course. But regardless of that, the election is done, and this lady and her team, 57 of them or whatever, they came, and they managed to get totally about 14% of eligible voter, which you alluded on that by 19, because some of them didn't get elected, of course. And now, for the next 4 or 5 years, the 86% of the province has to follow what 14% tells you.
You do what I tell you.
So my question from you is, shouldn't we rewrite the definition of democracy?
Okay, I get a little angry sometimes, or not angry, but
Excited.
expressive
Yeah.
about this stuff. 'Cause
And
this
you
stuff-
have to.
This stuff irritates me.
It irritates
just
me
a little
too.
bit, right?
Hey, don't see I am come here. At home I am banging my head to the wall.
Yeah, exactly. I'm screaming while I'm saying, calm down.
Well,
Turn it
well,
off.
at least you have a wife who can
Still,
calm you
that's
down.
Amazing. Yeah, long suffering. But no, in any event, look. We only live in a democracy in name. What we actually live in is a democratic dictatorship.
Oh yeah, you're.
We live in a democratic dictatorship. Okay.
Yeah.
A democratic dictatorship.
Rocco Galati call it silent, silent
Exactly.
dictatorship.
You get to vote for your dictator, and then for 4 years or 5 years, you don't get any say. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you're really rich, and you can buy tables of 10 at 1,000 a person or 500 a person at all of these political events during the time that your friends have a majority, you can write any law you want. All you do is hire a lobbyist and tell him to say, this is what I want to do. I want to take away all tenants' rights. And the lobbyist writes the bill for you. And then he goes, has chicken dinner with all the cabinet ministers and all the boys. And then some backbencher submits your bill. And then it gets passed as law. And they say, but Mike Harris, you're a mean person. And he says, no. It's in the best interest of all those people to be homeless. I mean to obey the law of free enterprise. And if you don't like what your landlord is charging you for rent, then you should move out and find someplace cheaper.
Well,
and if there's no place cheaper, too bad, because that's free enterprise. Okay? And then when the NDP came in 1990, you have the exact reverse of that. Okay? Because all their lobbyists and all their friends from the left
and
are
that
there.
is why the money
And
moves
so
out.
in they come and they do the rubber chicken and turkey dinner and blah, blah, blah. And the lobbyists write the bill. And the Canadian Labour Congress says, okay, we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. And they pass it all. And the next guy that gets elected, what do? They spend all their time first undoing everything Buddy did over there, and
At the cost of taxpayers, of
and
course.
doing their own. And the problem with that type of government, and the reason liberals governed for so long in the middle, is because many government projects take long-term planning. And so you'd get into a project and you'd take 10, 15 years to get it approved, and you'd fund it and get it in the budget, and you'd start on it, and you get halfway through, and some clown would get elected and say, no, we're not doing it. And this has happened here, the Spadina subway, the Spadina Expressway, the Spadina Expressway. Can you imagine what traffic would be like today if we built the extension on the Allen all the way down to the Gardner? Can you imagine? Okay, and on and on and on and on.
always
and on.
over budget and
the
all of
Gardner
that.
Expressway. Our politicians have jerked around so long making a decision what to do that we now can't make the decision. We can't make a good decision. All we can do is make a worse decision. If we had buried the Gardner like they buried the Big Dig in Boston 30 years ago, it took them 10 years to do it. It was an absolute nightmare. It was 5 times the budget. Now we're 20 years after, and guess what? Smartest thing anybody ever did. Okay? But so you can't elect a government that can do any planning for anything long term because they'll be defeated before they get it done, and the other guys will come in and push it away and take care of all their friends. So now our government, and again, I'm really critical of politicians, okay, but I do
rightfully so.
Okay, but I do understand, okay, that until they actually get power
to be able to do complete the job,
they don't actually understand they can't do it. Okay, so you're a dreamer, you're a smoker, a toker, a midnight toker. Yeah. Okay, and then you get power. Now, and if you're in a minority government, it's over. Okay, because the rules of the game are to obfuscate and to interfere, like the Harper's playbook on how to destroy a legislature when he was in opposition that he got from the Republicans in the United States, right? So if you can't beat someone at the ballot box, what you do is you use the legislative process to make sure they can't do anything. Filibuster and all the rest.
Yeah, or not giving the confidence
or whatever, and then you destroy them that way. Okay? So we no longer have politics where we used to have politics up until the Trudeau years, and in a lot of the Trudeau years, where our politicians were big thinkers, where there were real big ideas, and when and a government wasn't run by the prime minister, the government was run by a cabinet, and there were 20 people in that cabinet that could replace that prime minister.
Right now, it's like
now we got one guy, and we got a 22-year-old bully from a schoolyard who's the Minister of Employment.
Yeah,
and we got a banker who's the Minister of Finance that says that it's the Prime Minister's grandchildren that are going to have to solve our problems. And the Prime Minister says we're going to solve climate change, we're going to stop pollution of our hydrocarbons by 2185 years, when my grandchildren are 75 years and still running this country. Okay? And these people, they actually believe this stuff. This stuff doesn't come out of their mouth by accident. This is what they actually believe.
I mentioned that last time I spoke to you. Why don't we have any measurement? I mean, if you want to go obtain a driving license, you have to go through a series of the tests. If you want to get a job, let's say, you have to send a resume, then invited to interview, and then they check your credential. But for politicians, we don't have any measurement beforehand to understand.
That's because we get to vote.
No, I understand that, but there is no measurement for people to know. At least we don't. Why don't we have at least a psychological
analysis? Well, because they're all crazy, man. Okay, they're all psychos. They're all narcissists. If you actually had the psychological profile of most people in politics, you'd put them all in the nut house. You wouldn't put them in Parliament.
Well, maybe it is a nut house by itself.
Well, it is, but that's what I was saying. That's because what we've done is we've replaced governance and process with politics.
Yeah, and mixed with the capitalists from outside that is mess it up.
Money buys, money wins, right? Yeah. He who has the gold makes the rules. If you don't understand that, you just don't get anything, okay? But then you got to add, for example, Brian Mulroney was asked what the two most important events were during all the years he was in public life.
I remember. Yeah. Go ahead.
And so he said, two headlines I really liked. First headline said, Brian Mulroney wins big majority. Second headline that said, Brian Mulroney wins another big majority. Mulroney says, you know why? You know what? Because nothing else matters. And it was the truth.
And you can't expect these people really work for their constituents.
If the game is to get power, okay,
and work for few people,
and politics, there's no Marquess of Queensberry rules, right? You break the election laws. The election commissioner has to convict you, and if you break him in 2008, he might get you in court in 2015.
By then,
or you can be found in contempt of Parliament, and you just ask the Governor General to prorogue you. It's not a big deal.
Well, we had the same scenario in 2006.
Exactly.
With the in and out scandal.
Exactly.
They found the 63 people.
Broke the law.
They indicted 4 of them. By the time they go to court, we had another election in 2008.
And another majority.
And another scandal of the robocop.
And they did it again, okay? But here's the thing. okay, that election commission signed consent decrees. There's nothing in the Canada Elections Act that allows Elections Canada, or did allow Elections Canada, to not prosecute someone if they sign a consent decree that I won't break the law next time. Okay? If I drive 150 kilometers an hour into 400 in front of a cop, I'm charged with racing. And I lose my car for a week, and I can pay up a $10,000 fine. And on and on. I don't go to the judge and say, I'm a conservative, so you don't get to find me guilty. I promise not to do it again, Your Honor. So now give me a $500 fine for not producing my driver's license. Yeah, but you killed 12 nuns. Oh, yeah, but that was after the speeding offense. And that's a separate trial. And it's prejudicial for you to know that I actually killed 12 nuns speeding.
And it has to go to trial to prove that I killed them.
And you're not allowed to use that.
Yeah.
Even though it was your sister, Your Honor. Okay, it's ludicrous. Okay, it's ludicrous. If Canadians knew how ludicrous our system was, they wouldn't put up with it. They really wouldn't. And the media whitewashes it all.
Of course, you can't blame them, because when they get up in the morning, they are being people, I'm talking about constituents, citizens.
Yeah.
They are involved in all sorts of the nitty-gritty things that, by the way, with the policymaker set for them.
Right.
So they are busy. The only window of opportunity for them to get anything, if any, is half an hour news. And if they control that half an hour news, well, what you get?
No, thank God for the internet. Because the internet...
Even with the internet, you have to have initiative and time to go and look for it.
But osmosis, but osmosis is taking over. 1 million flowers are now blooming. We have a generation of kids, who are sort of, we'll say in the voting age from 18 to 29, okay, that turn out at half the rate of seniors, okay, but their involvement and monitoring of news and public affairs online is twice that of seniors. Now, they're getting their news from Facebook and from Google, and there is a problem with those organizations now signing deals with mainstream media to feed content, because they think that they'll be able to manipulate that. But as soon as they push it too far, then they'll go the way of MySpace. Okay? Okay? They won't survive, because consumerism on the internet is instantaneous. Okay? Shaming on the internet is instantaneous. And kids don't care if we shame. You're an asshole? Everybody knows you're an asshole. Oh, you weren't an asshole? Oh, geez, my bad. Okay? And that's the way it is. So the viciousness, the mercenariness,
and speed of that,
and the speed of
like Twitter
of the
something.
great unwashed will overtake any control that, at least in the free world, except you got Bill C-51, and now it's a criminal offense to say anything that affects the economy of Canada. So if I say it's wrong to pollute carbon and ship it into the atmosphere from tar sands, we should convert tar sands into ammonia and urea, capturing the CO2, and use ammonia for fuel instead of fertilizer, and use urea for fertilizer, and we make more money and we don't emit the carbon. I'm a terrorist.
Yeah.
Even though the IPCC said in 2007 that if we built 10,000 ammonia plants, we could scrub the CO2 out of air when we make the nitrogen to make ammonia. We could scrub the carbon out of natural gas, and we could actually reduce CO2 levels.
But-
and they said that 10 years ago. But I'm a terrorist if I tell you that there's a better way to deal with our hydrocarbons than the oil industry says. Because the oil industry runs the government, and the government tells the police, you're a terrorist because you're fighting against the economic interests of a Chinese oil company in Alberta.
Which is, by the way, they sold it, and then after they said, "Hey,
And now the Chinese-
we are going to review our future, our future deals, our future."
So, but anyway, so you get the point.
What I'm saying is, now that let me a little bit go fast forward after the disgraceful provincial election. I call it disgraceful.
Yeah, it really was.
That we had in Ontario. We had another disgraceful election, which was municipal.
Well, I thought you were going to talk about Sudbury.
No.
Because the Kathleen
we are going there.
Okay, we're going to go there. Okay,
but it happened before that.
Okay, let's go.
I'm going chronologically.
Okay, so what happened at the Toronto election?
Yeah, in Toronto election in general.
And what was wrong there? We traded a crackhead for a silver spooner.
And we don't know really what's happened in the last days of that. I know it was an illness issue, but I was always wondering if there was an illness, why he stayed to be for the consular aspect of that.
Because it's a slam dunk. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. He runs for his seat. His nephew, who was going to run for the council seat, runs for school board, and they're both elected.
And you just earlier mentioned about the Gardiner Express. These people are still they are negotiating as we speak right now.
Yeah.
Just a block down out of that, and it's still the guy wants to put the hybrid system.
Look, in all honesty, I'm not going to criticize Mayor Ford for the Gardiner, or not Mayor Ford, Mayor Tory for the Gardiner decision. To be brutally honest about it, because I don't know enough about it. Okay.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that former Liberal MP Jimmy Karaginis, the Greek guy on council there, he's saying, we studied burying the Gardiner 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was going to be expensive to do it. But it's going to be a lot more expensive to do that now. And what they said was, we're going to take that option entirely off the table. But when they took that option off the table, they didn't have the hybrid option on the table, which was 1.5 times more.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, I don't believe that you can rehabilitate a white elephant.
No, you can't.
Okay. It's just good money after bad. So I mean, I believe that if we're going to have to spend the money, then whatever they do should be generational. Okay?
There is a lack of foresight for this people.
So it's got to be a 50-year decision. It's not a 20-year decision or a 15 or a 10 or the term that I'm in office decision. So. I think that all options should be on the table, and a full cost accounting analysis of a 50-year rollout should be there too. And what is the tax base, for example, over 50 years projected from industry if you bury it, because now all that space is available for blah, blah, blah. So there's never been a full cost accounting analysis of it. Okay, so I think that should happen right now.
No, I just use that as an example.
Yeah.
That business as usual. The point is, I'm not trying to say which decision is better than another.
Right.
But decision has to be made.
Yeah, and
Either
they're playing
TTC
around.
and they're playing around. How about Mississauga? Crombie got the.
Mississauga is very, very, and I'm pretty critical of a lot of politicians, but you won't hear me say a single bad word about Bonnie
Because
Crombie.
you live there?
Well, no, I've known Bonnie and her husband and her family for 20 years. And I
have a bias about Mississauga.
Well, yeah, no, I'll declare. When she got in the race against Carolyn Parrish for Ward 5.
Carolyn Parrish, she used to be MP.
Yeah, and she didn't get in the race until the
around?
end. I was her sign chairman. I put up more Bonnie Crombie signs in 48 hours than had been put up in this city in that by-election than the city of Mississauga in the history of the world. I put up 15,000 signs. It was ridiculous. I mean, not 15,000, but it was 1,500 anyway. And Bonnie won by 248 votes.
Well, sure,
And
that's-
in the area which I worked around my house, she got 44% of the vote.
That's very good.
So
That's
she wouldn't have
impressive.
won, if you know. And she
Yeah.
said that. She said when she won, "Well, thank the Vezina family because I wouldn't be here." And we worked for her in the election. She lost to Brad Butt because she was the federal Liberal MP in Mississauga-Streetsville, and we were there when she lost. And Hazel came in and said, "You should run. You should run for council." And then, of course, she did when the Eve Adams went to Ottawa.
Hazel likes it.
Yeah, oh no, good friends. So then we helped her win Ward 5, and then once she won Ward 5, you know, we helped her become mayor, and she's going to be a great mayor. And you can see already the change in style. With all due respect to Hazel McCallion, she was a mayor at a different time. You know, they didn't do a lot of long-term planning. They didn't do budgets for infrastructure.
She was there for 10
No, I know, but that's
years.
my point. They didn't do budgeting for infrastructure repair and upgrade. You know, they just we got all these developers giving us all this money for building permits, and they forgot that eventually you're going to run out of land. You're going to run out of those, you know, those checks from the developers, right? And the crunch came, and here you had Mississauga, which I lived in for 25 years. It was the only city in the country that didn't owe a dime. Didn't owe a dime. And, you know, now we're borrowing $500 million for infrastructure, because if you don't spend the $500 million now, it's going to cost you $3.5 billion to do it later, okay? So, you know, with all due respect to McCallion, she set the agenda, and that's how it was, and you agreed with her, or you were Carolyn Parrish, right? But Bonnie's approach was to go every one of those councillors after she got elected, before council sat, and to be inclusive and collective and collaborative. And I will say, much like Mayor Tory is trying to do. Okay, is letting everybody in on the decision and having their say.
Does she have the consensus of the rest?
She's got enough support on council so that the major issues that they're fighting for are going to get done. Now, whether they should be done, that's another issue,
game,
right?
Yes,
because is the best expenditure of the money that they have for an LRT from Lakeshore, you know, to Brampton?
Yeah.
Maybe the best expenditure of that money is for a subway extension from Kipling to Square One, boys and girls.
Yes.
You know, there's another one. I'll give you an example. You know, all these experts tell us that, you know, we need rapid transit ways. Okay? Because, you know, people got to be able to move fast on the bus in order they won't ride the bus if the bus is slow. So we spent $1.5 billion on a rapid transit way in Mississauga. So you're sitting on Eastgate Parkway during rush hour. It takes 40 minutes to get from Dixie Road to Cawthra.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's our transit way with one bus every 15 minutes. Okay. And even if it gets the ridership that they said it'll get in 20 years from now, why they built it, there's one bus every 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's just your frequencies.
You could have bought every person that's going to ride on that thing a car. Cheaper than you built that transit way. California says, let's do a study on single-use transit ways. What does the study say? Don't build a single-use anything. Build a multi-use thing. So that when the expressway is filled up and there's nothing on the transitway but buses, we'll charge rich people $2 a mile to use the HOV lane. And what happened in 5 years? They made enough money on the revenue from the HOV lane to pay for the upgrade of all the transitway. The driving distance across Los Angeles was cut in half.
And Los Angeles is
and that's a nightmare place. At 4 o'clock in the morning, you can't get across the city. Then the next study they did was, okay, now, let's do a study that says we'll build 12 lanes where we only need 4. What will happen? All 12 lanes will fill up. let's do a study on building 12 subway tracks. What'll happen? They won't fill up.
No, they won't. It's like,
People will use the vehicles to the maximum capacity of the roadways. It's called the law of chaos.
yeah.
Okay? So the answer to get traffic off the roads is, guess what? Take all your 4-lane highways and make them 2-lane highways. Take the speed limit from 80 kilometers an hour and make it to 30 kilometers an hour. You know why? Because it's such an aggravation to drive on the roadways that everyone will use public transit.
I was wondering where you
That's
going.
the answer, you see. So our politicians follow these silver linings, these golden fleeces,
Yeah.
and what happens?
Now, having said that, you said mentioned something about Sudbury very just briefly. Well,
Yes.
what was your take on that?
What I can't understand is why our government believes that sexual rights are the only rights that matter in Ontario. Your religious right to educate your children the way you want, you don't have. The rights of a disabled candidate who won a nomination, he has no rights. We're going to offer him a job, and if he doesn't take it, we're going to throw him out on the sidewalk, and we're
Which
going to
they
appoint
did.
a candidate.
Which they did.
Okay, which they did. And the chief electoral officer, for the first time in the history of the country, comes to the conclusion that there was a bribe offered. First time in the history of Ontario there's been a ruling.
Yeah.
Okay? And now we got the OPP investigating it.
But nobody hears it.
Or it's been handed to the federal crown and the RCMP. But we're running out of police officers and police forces to investigate the Ontario Liberal Party.
Which is in government.
Okay, okay, and wait a minute now. Okay, what, 7 years investigating Orange?
And what was the conclusion?
6 years. Wait. 6 years investigating e-health. Okay, and on and on and on and on. Look. We'll all be 150 years old before the police gets finished investigating all of these things. We'll all die of old age. All of the people that committed the offenses will be dead.
That is why I said when even they get someone to be indicted politically or otherwise, then the political judicial wheels are so slow, or they drag it on so slow, to the point that there is another election or another changes or another, by then
And it becomes moot.
Yeah, and what
Because the person who broke the law is living in Kuwait as a school teacher. Right?
yes,
Right?
Yeah.
What happened to the campaign manager in Guelph that did the robocall things? He went to Kuwait to be a school teacher. Got a job as a school teacher for an oil company. Don't know how the hell that happened.
I have no
Okay?
idea.
But Michael Sauna, he's the guy that he's going to jail, and he's the only person involved.
Oh, they always have someone to throw
Under the bus.
patsy.
Under the bus, right.
We are getting close to the end of the show. I just want to add, I never get enough of talking to you, of listening
Thank
to you,
you.
rather.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You don't get to talk.
No, it's so much to absorb, quite honestly. What do you see? What do you see very briefly, because we have only 5 minutes? We have about 5
Federal
minutes.
election?
Is it, first of all, will we have it?
Okay. I believe, and I've been taking bets on the internet on my Facebook page, as you know, for about 2 months, that Harper will resign before that election. And that was before the Alberta election. I was taking bets for a case of beer. Greg Vezina on Facebook, go ahead, bet me a case of beer, I'll bet you. Even money, by the way, no 10 to 1. No, here's what I think is going to happen, and it's been played out. Jim Prentice called an election in Alberta. Okay. Jim Prentice had the arrogance of office.
Yes.
Okay? The voters in Alberta show the Conservatives what they think of arrogance of office.
And Wild Rose as
Okay?
well. After
and Wild Rose as well.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
So now a sea change happened. Okay, so all the geniuses in Ottawa, town Steve, nah, it's okay, it's no big deal. There'll be a blip in the polls, they'll be gone in 3 days. And now the NDP are leading the poll. See, the problem that Harper has is he did such a good job of confirming that Trudeau's not ready for the job.
that people believe him. But what he didn't do,
He did with Ignatieff too.
but what he didn't do is it convinced people that Mulcair's not ready for the job. In fact, they think Mulcair is. So now Harper's going to come out with a whole bunch of new attack ads against Mulcair. And people at home are going to sit back and go, wait a minute. This is the same as Alberta. I believe that Mulcair will win the election.
Oh, do you?
Yes, I do. And I actually believe that if he comes out with one or two more of the tools of direct democracy, he's already running on mixed-membered proportional representation. If he comes out with a proposed referenda law, if he says, you don't have to be afraid to vote for me because I'm going to do something none of these guys will do for you. I'm going to do what Mike Harris promised to do and got an 80-seat majority. He promised to keep his promises and give us a law to make sure that everybody else will too. If Mulcair actually comes out with electoral reform and referenda law, he'll win 200 seats.
I don't agree for the last note. I'm glad that you put
Okay.
your prediction online so
Yeah.
we know that where you stand. I personally, especially after hearing the news that Duceppe again got into the Bloc Québécois, I think there is a talk or something about his re-election of the leadership.
How many seats did he get in 2011?
Four or five.
Okay. A long way from 50 to 60 seats.
we will have very interesting year.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us, and thank you for
Thank you.
being my very first and gracious host. I will have you again as soon as we get to the election time. I will have you again come here because it's very important to have your view on the ongoing process.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for staying with us for the last hour or so. Please remember, take part in your electoral process. Vote first.
Yes.
Help a candidate. Be a volunteer, or even be a candidate. Thank you.